Welcome to this lesson dedicated to the law. So we are looking into the law of freedom. Neville Goddard called it the law of liberty. It was the classic English, but it's the law. We're looking into the law today. It's such an important law. It's the law of freedom. This is one of the most profound, one of the most beautiful lessons. I actually changed my clothes to make sure I pay respect to the teacher, to Neville Goddard and Rev Ike, who introduced us to this powerful concept. This is the law of freedom. One of the most important laws. I changed my clothes to make sure that I pay tribute to Rev Ike and to Neville Goddard, who introduced us to this law. The law is found in myths, it's found in the Bible, it's found in many ancient scriptures. And we have two types of teachers in the world. We have the fundamentalists, the orthodox fundamentalists. So for example, if you study Kemetic civilization, you will find people called Egyptologists. They all talk about Egypt and gods and the pharaohs. This never existed. If you read the Bible, you'll find people who talk about sin, hell, punishment, judgment. So these are the fundamentalists. They are orthodox. They follow the orthodox text. There is a literal interpretation of the law. So they say, this is the law, there's no room for negotiation, this is what happened. It's a true history, that is an historical event. So such and such story in the Bible is an historical event. And then we have the mystics. And if you look at the word mystics, these are the myth makers. Yeah. So they say, no, there is something more profound than that. The Bible is not talking about God outside in the sky, it's talking about God inside us, the goddess inside you. Whether you want to heal yourself, whether you want to become wealthy, you can do it if you employ the energy, the intelligence of the God within. So here in the law of freedom, we call it the law of liberty. So there is a story of Rev Ike. You can Google this. There was a man called P.T. Green. P.T. Green was in prison, on and off prison for 20 years. So he was in prison, physical prison. So one of the fundamentals of the law here is that the mind in the White House, the mind of the man in the White House, of the president in the White House, is the same mind as the man in prison. They are the same mind. There is only one mind. There is only one God. There is only one Christ. There is only one hero. It's the same mind. But the difference between these two individuals is that one mind has been educated has been organized, has been arranged to be in prison. Another mind has been arranged to be in the White House. So it's very important because the mind, if you live in England, for example, the mind in the palace of the king is exactly the same mind as the man who's in prison. They're the same mind. Is that the mind of the king has been arranged, has been trained, has been programmed to be king. He sees himself as a king. He has been seeing himself as a king since he was born. And while the man in prison, he has seen himself as a prisoner since he was born. Since he got into hip hop, for example, at one point he sees himself as a prisoner. It becomes negative. It's the same mind. And it's very important. So we have in Rev Ike the story of a man called P.T. Green. So P.T. Green was in prison for many years, on and off, for 20 years. Then one day he heard the teachings of Rev Ike. And then he said, well, I need to change my life. I need to stop this. And then he starts to meditate, to reflect. He is in prison. And then he starts to elevate his energy. While he was in prison, he started to elevate his energy. Like by listening to the tapes. You might be doing the same by listening to this YouTube channel. You elevate your energy. He's elevated energy, and then there was an event. Someone wanted to commit suicide. And then P.T. Green was called to go and negotiate with the man. For all the prisoners, they chose P.T. Green because they knew that there was something in him that could help the man. So he went, in 19 minutes, he got the man to stop committing suicide. He didn't want to commit suicide anymore. And then P.T. Green, then he regained his freedom. He went out, he created a business, he became a millionaire. Do you see what I'm saying here? So the mind of the millionaire The mind of the millionaire is the same mind as the person who's broke, who has no money or low, has money problems. It's the same mind. The only difference that they've been educated. One to go for the millions, another one to be broke. And then one is breaking the law, another one is following the law of freedom. And they say, oh, okay, bro, I don't get it. What this has to do with me? In your life, you might say, I'm not in prison. But you might be in debt. If you're a university student, you are in debt, huge debt. And then you won't be able to live a free life if you don't pay your debt. So that debt is a prison. You have a house, you have a mortgage, debt is a prison. And you want to get out. It might be a nice prison compared to the other prison, but it's a financial freedom. It's a financial prison, which are interest rates. You might be in a relationship you don't want to be. It's a kind of a prison and you want to get out. Now, how do you get out of huge debt if you're a university student? Or how do you get out if you were in prison physically? Listen to this. How would you get out? We go now into Neville Goddard. Neville Goddard, he is traveling. He goes to an island, and the island to visit his relatives. And then he buys one-way ticket. He goes to the island. Okay? Back in these days, he only traveled by boat. It's 1930s, 1940s. He gets there, he spends his time with his family. It's time to return. He doesn't have a return ticket. And there are only 2 boats that come into this, and it takes 120 people. Another one comes every 3 weeks. It only takes about 60 people. So there are thousands of people in the waiting list waiting to be taken to travel from the island to New York. So he's stuck. His brother criticizes him. How did you manage to come here without buying a return ticket? You could have done that from New York. Now you're stuck. Now, Neville Goddard, he knows the law of freedom. He doesn't violate the law by becoming depressed or anxious. He goes into his hotel room and he sits down in a chair, and then he starts to meditate. He reflects, he visualizes himself several times going into the boat, taking his family, and then feeling the smell of the ocean and traveling. He visualized that vision, the vision of the future. Be inspired by the vision of the future rather than the memories of the past. He visualizes, spends hours doing it. 24 hours later, he receives a phone call from the company. They give him the ticket for himself and his wife and his child. So he freed himself. He was in a prison, but it was a different type of prison. It's not a financial prison, it's not a real prison, it's not an emotional prison. So mental illness, emotional prison. Debt, financial prison. Poverty, finance and knowledge prison. He didn't break the law. So this is the law of freedom that is available to you. You don't need me. You don't need any gurus. What you need the law. You need to apply the law.